Chris Rock is a 58-year-old American comedian, actor, and filmmaker who is best known for appearing on Saturday Night Live and for creating and narrating the show Everybody Hates Chris. Growing up, Chris Rock believed he had undiagnosed autism, until later he found out he has a nonverbal learning disorder, or NVLD. NVLD is a learning disability that causes difficulty with motor, visual, spatial, and social skills. He has trouble with poor coordination, handwriting, taking things too literal, and trouble reading social cues. Chris Rock has opened up about his disability and said, "All I understand is the words." On a separate interview, Chris stated, "I thought I was actually dealing with it, and the reality is never dealt with. The reality was the pain and the fear that it brought me. I was experiencing it every day." Chris has learned how to overcome his disability and how to deal with it by seeing therapists that help him work through his limitations. He now understands how it took a big toll on his life growing up.
The director, producer, and screenwriter of Indiana Jones, Jaws, and other famous films, Steven Spielberg, has struggled with dyslexia his whole life. He was made fun of because it took him 2 years longer to read than his peers. He was officially diagnosed at age 60. He has actually found some inspiration in his diagnosis. He encourages artists with learning disabilities. On one account, he said, "You are not alone, and while you will have dyslexia for the rest of your life, you can dart between the raindrops to get where you want to go. It will not hold you back."
Billie Eilish, who is 21, was born on December 18, 2001. She is an American singer and songwriter. She first gained recognition in 2015 for the song Ocean Eyes. In 2020, she became the youngest person to win a Grammy for Album of the Year. Billie Eilish was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome when she was only 11 years old. Tourette syndrome is a nervous disorder involving repetitive movements or unwanted sounds. Tourette syndrome starts in childhood. There are more than 200,000 U.S. cases per year. Treatment can help, but cannot cure this condition. This condition is chronic, which means it can last for years or be lifelong. Tourette requires a medical diagnosis. According to Harper's Bazaar, Billie said, "I'm very happy to talk about it. I actually really love answering questions about it because it's very, very interesting. And I'm incredibly confused by it, and I don't really get it. The tics I do all day long are wiggling my ears, raising my eyebrows, and clicking my jaw. Focusing on other tasks, like singing or riding horses, Billie doesn't experience tics often. People often think I'm trying to be funny. They usually respond with a laugh. I get incredibly offended by this," exclaimed Billie. Billie still has tics, but not as extravagant as before.
Sixty-year-old Johnny Depp is a world-renowned actor and musician who played in many movies such as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Edward Scissorhands, Pirates of the Caribbean, and his first ever movie, Nightmare on Elm Street. Mr. Depp is always on your television, whether it's in his commercials or his movies, but have you ever noticed that he is almost always wearing glasses? This is actually because he's blind in one eye and extremely nearsighted in the other. Johnny Depp has had vision problems his entire life. He stated, "Everything is just very, very blurry. I've never had proper vision." Johnny Depp has to rely heavily on his prescription glasses, and when it comes to his films, it's more difficult.
So what was it like growing up with dyslexia?
It was a little bit of a struggle, but I honestly didn't find out I had it until college. I'd been tested for it, but nobody told me, if that makes sense. One of my advisors in college, when it came down to figuring out my school schedule and taking a foreign language, she had mentioned, like, oh, I don't know how you're going to take a foreign language when you're dyslexic. And I'm like, dyslexic? What? Well, then looking back, everything started adding up as I educated myself a little bit on it, realizing that maybe that's why I was taking so much longer to take tests and reading things, sitting through class discussions with PowerPoints and stuff, having to take notes off that. I found myself like having to reread the PowerPoint like 5 or 6 times before I could even take a note, and I would miss so much of the information just because I was second guessing everything I was putting down because it just wasn't really comprehending onto the paper.
So did you play sports in high school?
I did. I played football and I wrestled in high school, and then I also played football in college.
So were there any challenges playing sports?
Not so much in high school. In college there was, because we ran more of a hurry-up offense, so everything was on a wristband, so it was small print, and in college the plays are a lot longer. So unfortunately, sometimes I'd find myself would be lining up to run a play, and I'd be second guessing what I just read on my wrist. So there was that challenge, and unfortunately, I had great coaches in college, but I don't think they understood that struggle that I had.
So what challenges do you have when reading?
My eyes just tend to wander. So like me, like trying to read like a novel or something is just an absolute nightmare. So I usually just don't. But my eyes tend to wander, so I could be like at the top of the page, like reading, and all of a sudden down at the bottom, and I actually don't comprehend what I just read. So I have to go back over it. Sometimes I have to read things like 2 or 3 times to get a full understanding. And like I said, like taking notes was always a struggle when it came to what's up on the board or PowerPoints and stuff like that, and getting it down on a piece of paper to take proper notes. I actually just experienced this doing the training for this job. I had to go to Charleston for 3 days, and they throw a lot of information at you real quick, and they're going through PowerPoints real quick, and I found myself really struggling to get all the information I was trying to gather because I couldn't get it on paper fast enough because I was second-guessing what I had just read on the PowerPoint.
So what challenges do you face as an adult?
The challenges I face as an adult is, like I was just working on making some worksheets on my laptop just now, and I thought I found like the perfect worksheet, and I misread a question. I didn't even see a question on there until I was getting ready to print it, and I'm like, well, that's not a question I want on that worksheet. So, yeah, I just kind of miss things sometimes. So I always had people proofread my papers in college. And I definitely read my papers or any worksheets I make for students over probably 3 or 4 times before I print it, just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Because like I said, my eyes do wander. Things kind of get a little bunched up. So.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
No problem.